All right, that recording should be up. So this evening, Cobus Van Til of Cubic Defense is going to talk to us, with us, about verification versus validation. What's the difference? And why we should care. Over to you.
Okay, thanks. Screen share. Our company's recently decided that we should go over to Teams, which is horrible, but that mixes things up. Okay, so this introduction has been done. I sort of wanna, no, well, let's run with this. And I forgot to click on my little laser pointer, which means it gives you time to read this first slide while I have this spinning wheel of death. Something wrong with my laptop when it comes to activating the laser pointer. So I've spent some time under, not really a mentor, but some guy I considered to be a mentor because he was actually doing his doctorate just before retirement. When I was working at Denali Aviation at the time. So a lot of what I say tonight, yeah, I'm sort of scared in a sense. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk a lot of nonsense, but I do want to throw it out there that what I'm saying here was actually part of somebody's doctorate at least. So hopefully that counts for something. Okay, it's and then I realized people you're sort of human nature. You pay more attention if you think the guy actually knows what he's talking about. So I'm just going to start with something that's a bit maybe blowing my own horn. But so I'm an electronic engineer by degree, but turned systems engineer. So I worked on this beast for 19 years. And I started out, so this is called the Rooivalk. It's South Africa's homegrown attack helicopter. The project started in the 80s already. I joined in 2001. So I just worked my way from a very junior engineer to becoming the weapons computer system specialist. And then I ended up as the chief engineer for the integrated weapons system. So over 19 years is obviously not that I was magical, but I worked myself up. So maybe to put that just in context, when you look at the aircraft, it's immediately split into two things. There's the thing that fly, what we call the air vehicle system. So you have a systems engineer running that, with system engineers under him for all the systems. You can say sort of chief systems engineer, and then so it's the air vehicle, and then the other part, it's a weapon. So all your missiles, rockets, the visionics, main sighting system, cannon, those pilot mounted helmet systems. So look and shoot capability, where you look with your helmet, the cannon just slave to your head. All of those things form the integrated weapon system. So I ended up being over this baby. So I hope it just sort of gives some support that I think, as I say in this, let's maybe just run through this quickly. So during this time, I have touched on integrated logistics support, heading to help out and actually involved in databases. I ended up writing, basically sort of heading the specifications for Rooivalk Mark II, which never happened, but it is in May. And then I was heavily involved with qualification and certification. So I guess, oh yeah, and then immigrated to New Zealand in 2019. So that's basically when my career stopped there. So I'm no expert, but I have lots of scars. And I've never had formal systems engineering education. I grew up in the environment, basically. Back in the day, there was no such thing as a system engineer certificate or degree. I believe these days you actually go and study systems engineering. So I've learned through experience and being in the environment. Okay, enough of that nonsense. That's just so I have some credibility when I discuss things tonight. I quickly brought up this picture just because we might refer back to it. I'm not really going to talk about this much, but why I want to bring it up is I see this is one of the first places where you would notice, depending on whose graph you look at, you see verification versus validation at places. So I think we all agree you have a user requirement or a contract. This user requirement can be internal to your company, something you guys dream up and want to shrink wrap and sell to public, but usually for us, it's some government or other organization that gives us a contract. And then depending on which V model you use, you'll just put the user level here and move down and up. But if you use the more complete model, as you guys would know, you have this life cycle horizontal bar here where you start with your feasibility and concepts, which I don't think a lot of us has stepped in. And you end it off with your maintenance and upgrades and decommissioning, all that stuff in the end of the thing. But the important stuff where we live as system engineers is this: you have a high level. I specifically kept these terms very vague, very much so, because I don't want to have verification validation already. But as we know, we start with your high level requirements, which you distill into low level things. In our military teams, it was your A level and your B level, and eventually you get to your detailed level specifications. And then here's where the guys start soldering the components and write the software. And then we go up where we do unit testing, test assembly. So the important concept, which hopefully we all know because we're all good systems engineers, is as you start writing your high-level specification, the first requirement, you immediately start writing your verification for that thing. And same as you go down, you write your requirements, you write your verification, and as you go up, you verify against it. Hopefully there's nothing too weird about this thing and everybody knows it well. Oh yeah, why eyes. So at this level, I see a lot of times you would get the terms verification here, and then in this final one, you get validation back. So at this level here, you validate. Now, yeah, okay, that's not really where I come from. Hang on, watch the space. Okay, so I'm just going to jump in with let's just do this with a few examples and see how that works for us. So you'll get the user requirement, and it's usually not well written. It's vague and full of contradictions. So this guy tells us he developed a hybrid passenger vehicle, and we engineers, so we immediately get an acronym. It's HPV, using composite material. This HPV must have a top speed of 180. The HPV must have traction control and handling characteristics that allows it to do a hairpin bend at 30 kilometers per hour. And then a system engineer immediately, that's not well defined. So I have to look at the definition there. The HPV shall comply with the latest safety standards. I just threw this one in so that I have a segue into certification. Okay, so you get this vague thing from the customer. Now, as a system engineer requirement, let's just look at number one: develop a hybrid passenger vehicle using composite material. So you know what you're doing, so you know to write it in clear, unambiguous, and atomic requirements. I use the term atomic, which is maybe not the best, but the meaning I guess we all have. It means that you need to have one goal, one topic. It's not two things in a requirement. It's only one thing that you need to achieve. Okay, so we break this number one up. Clearly, the HPVs shall have an internal combustion engine, because we all know that a hybrid vehicle needs a petrol engine and a electric motor. So it shall have an internal combustion engine, it shall have an electric motor drive system, and it shall be manufactured from composite material. So we've taken this first thing and broken it up into nice, three little concise stuff. So why do we have the above blue requirements? Because the user requirement says so. Very straightforward. We don't have to labor that too much. Now, let's refine this a bit. So if we look at the norm, so here's the three, still the I user requirement. We have the three blue requirements we got exactly from the user. Oh yeah, by the way, if you feel to put up your hand, shout. But hopefully so far I'm not lying too much. So okay, we take number two. The high performance vehicle shall have an electric motor drive system. Now we go and okay, so in order to achieve that, each wheel of the HPV shall be individually powered by an electric motor. The HPV shall have a lithium polymer battery. The LPB shall have enough capacity to enable the HPV to drive for 4 hours on a level road with a packs of 200 kilograms and a full tank of fuel at 100 kilometers an hour. So two things here. I can already see the eyebrows. If you're a classic academic specialist in systems engineering, this is wrong because I immediately went into design here, or I preempted things by already specifying, directing the design. Now, this is a topic I would also like to at some stage discuss, because but it's a meeting on its own. If you follow the top-down approach, that is classical. So you start with everything clean, and you would actually say on this point number 2, the HPV shall have a energy storage capability. So you don't define at all where you're going with this. You just say there should be an energy storage capability, and then etc. Go with that. However, that's the top-down approach. Then obviously you have the bottom-up approach. And here again, I might have my terms not as we always know it, but once again, I'll blame it on my mentor who did his doctorate. Top down, classical, you have this start with the system, then you refine it, and you try and steer clear of being specific about things you're going to use. Bottoms up is you look what's lying around in the workshop. Hey guys, we have a battery here and we have a set of wheels, and if we connect these two things together with a motor, and so you build it up from the bottom. But then there's the middle out approach, which is actually what I want to say 80% of us is doing. You are in a company. Our company already specializes in lithium polymer batteries. So instead of me trying to be clever and write this perfect systems engineering spec, which costs time and money, we know we're going to end up here. So you preempt this by just chucking in what you know your company already has and as a handle on and a stand and technology you work with. So this is a debate. And it's a gray area, and you should be careful, but this is typically what you will do in a middle out approach. Okay, and then this one here, the customer never said this, but it is fairly obvious that you need a specification like this. Otherwise, you have no real, you need this kind of specification. Otherwise, how do you specify the capacity of the battery? So some of these things you immediately need to highlight. You obviously go back with meetings with the customer, clarify it, and get it. So why do we have these requirements? This 1, 2, 3 over here. This is derived requirements from number 2. So the previous slide, we had the contractual requirements because the customer told us so. This is derived from what the customer has told us. Now, let's just look at this number 1, the high performance. I'm on a different topic. The hybrid passenger vehicle shall have an internal combustion engine. So the engineers know that this would be really awesome if we say this HPV shall be able to run on diesel or petrol. And why do I have requirement here? Because that would make the HPV much more awesome, and it's a great challenge. So let's get to validation. So the thing to think about for validation, well, the one I'm going to advertise tonight, and we can start pulling hair and sharing, tearing shirts here. But if you think of this, I received the Best Car Maker of the Year award, and now I feel validated as an engineer. So validation in this context means something has a right to exist. And this is the context that we should be using validation in. So therefore, the existence of a requirement gets validated. Now, if we look at our example, those first 3 blue ones that we got from the initial customer requirement, we validate by saying this requirement has the right to exist because it come out of the contract. So how it practically works, I'll show examples in the end how I implement, but I guess everybody knows doors. In doors, you'll have your columns, you have your requirements column. You need a column for validation. And in that column, you will just select the type as contractual. And if it's a contractual requirement, typically you will also have a link back to the contractual requirement. The second one, we label as derived requirements because it's derived. Now, the moment you derive a requirement, you need to give a reason. So for each one of this, you need to write a little bit of motivation why you have this requirement. And the motivation when it's fairly obvious, don't go and write the thesis. But in these cases, it's still fairly obvious why you need these requirements, so you can keep it really short. But sometimes a requirement is not that obvious, so you need to motivate it. So and derived requirements typically, okay, mind you, I'm going ahead, we can get there. Then this 1 year that I added, the HPV shall be able to run on diesel or petrol. There's no validation why this requirement exists. We've added it because it's awesome, but the customer didn't ask for it and it's not needed, so you delete that. Now, no engineer will go and write down a requirement he likes and then not validate it. So you will validate it by giving a good derived requirement. But that's why your derived requirements or requirements in general needs to be signed off by obviously a committee or / chief designer, but usually you will have a design committee. So the design committee will be the guys that looks at this derived requirement, that this guy will have a derived explanation there and then says, no, this is not flying because this thing is just going to cost us money, put a lot of risk into the program, delete the thing. So this is basically the reason for validation in my world, and I've actually written whole databases for a company that require things, and I might share that database if we have time, which show how I implement this. So the existence of a requirement must be validated. And what bothers me is companies seldom do validation explicitly. It's always implicitly. I mean, whenever you write requirements, you obviously think about why you write it. So it's not like you don't do this in your head, but these things should actually be written down so that when you go back 6 months from now and somebody is asking, where did this requirement come from? That validation is your reason and your proof, and it's proof that the committee said this thing should exist. Otherwise, you're effectively liable for costing the company money. Okay, yeah, I just elaborated. So your two main, you can really, as a company, decide what you want for validation criteria. But typically, I like to have contractual and derived as your main categories. So I have contractual, and that's just that. But then I will have derived safety, derived environmental, regulatory, certification. So you're going to have a whole list of things that works for your company. So it just helps you to quickly categorize all your derived requirements. Let me just see where. Okay, we're gonna. What's happening here with my? Come on, mouse. Here was another thing. So yeah, if you can't validate the existence of a requirement, you have to delete it, because this non-validated requirements is cost increase and it's schedule increase, and somebody needs to pay it. And though, don't try and sell a cool requirement to a customer. This is another tip for free. Whenever you have, because you can argue up front, you give this thing to the customer and tell them that this is a very cool feature and we're going to add it. But that is how you get into that trouble of the price tag on your quote that you sent in the end to the customer increase a lot, and then the customer goes to the other guy with a cheaper quote. So it's really good practice to keep all this fancy stuff out of your initial let's get a signed offer, because it keeps your price down, and that's the initial thing that you drive. So if you really like I picked up from the Israelis, they're very good at this. It looks good, but when you read the fine print, they actually give you very close to nothing, and then you sign the contract because it's cheap. And then afterwards, it's, oh, you actually want this as well. And then for each feature that you have to add, all this cool stuff, then it's easy because now they're already locked in, and you can, okay, we will definitely add this cool feature, but it's costing a bit extra. So yeah, that's just be careful to try and be too smart up front and sell nice features to the client, because it's actually typically detrimental to your getting the contract. Verification, and I don't have to spend too much time on this because I think everybody knows about verification, but verification is a proof that the requirement has been successfully implemented. So verification can be done by means of I just 4, but there's many more. So inspection, just go and look. Hey, is the thing there? I said this. The car should be red. Is the car red? Yes, tick. Testing, can it do 120 kilometers with a full tank of petrol, blah, blah, blah. You go and do a test. Yes, it's doing that. Analysis, so you can't really, or the test is too expensive, or definitely you can't really test it. So you go away and do a lot of hard calculations, and then you prove by analysis that the thing is working as advertised. Or similarity, we've done another product which we have already proven that this thing works, and this thing is exactly the same. So similarity is a tricky one, but yes, we do use that often. So high-level verification procedures must be written as part of the requirement process. That's this V thing here in the background. The moment you write the requirement, you need to write the rough. This is how we're going to test it. Because if you can't test the requirement, you have to rewrite it so that it can be tested. And if you can't rewrite it to be tested, then delete it. Because a requirement that can't be tested shouldn't exist. That is, I'll take that fight any day, but I have experience in it. So the car shall handle well on a gravel road. This requirement is as horrible as it can get, because handle well is completely untestable and gravel road is untestable. So you can now go to a vehicle test center that has some kind of concrete thing that simulates a gravel road, and so now you go and you write, we will test it at this test center on that thing at this speed, and it should be able to do this turn radius at that speed, etc. So it becomes something that you can quantify. Handle well is whatever, that's impossible. So you have to rewrite that as well in terms of like this example. So you specify a turn radius and on the surface, which is quantifiable, etc. So now I do want to say, I worked in the aircraft industry, as I said, and there is sometimes stuff that is vague like this. Like in the aircraft thing, there is I almost want to say a handle well property, but big minds over many years have defined the process. So the requirement is actually written that you use this. I can't remember the exact name, but you use this process. It's sort of a scoring process that so a number of pilots would fly this profiles, and then they will score the aircraft on that. So that is where it does become not so quantifiable, but even there, as I say, there's a very well-defined and internationally accepted standard how it's handled. So really be careful of that one. Okay, the reason why I go on about this, maybe your companies is awesome, but I still want to see a company where they don't write crap requirements like this. And then you look at this and who wrote this? Where does it come from? We really need to, yeah, install this thing, hit it into our junior system engineers that look at your requirements, make sure they don't have nonsense in them. If you can't test it, it's not a requirement. So there's our requirement traceability part 1. You have your initial user contract / requirement, whatever the user gives you. And yes, your traceability between stuff. And this is as it is in my database. You write your requirement. Your requirement immediately has a link to validation, why this thing exists. Your requirement immediately has a high-level verification thing. This is how I intend testing it. And if any of these things fall flat, it's not atomic, not ambiguous, non-ambiguous, it must be verifiable. Okay, must be validated is missing here. If you don't have those things, then this requirement shouldn't be signed off. Okay, so I want to move on to the other things, but just before I do that, is there any initial, is somebody already red under the collar, or is it still more or less acceptable? Or questions?
So I would say in my experience, I see some thumbs up in the chat there. In my experience, validating a set of requirements is something that we often do. But I'm waiting with bated breath to hear how validation of a system might be addressed. And maybe that's coming up next.
No, disappointment.
Okay.
I will,
Okay.
okay, but we can definitely discuss that.
Okay.
Okay, no, I just want to, but okay, let's keep to the rest
Ah,
short, and then we can have that discussion. Would be good to know. So qualification, this is a bit of a tougher debate, but where verification is something you do against every requirement, as we now just went through the whole thing. You can't have a requirement if you don't verify it, then it doesn't exist. But qualification, and I think these things. Qualification typically focus only on your performance-related requirements. So in this example, if you say the display shall be shall be dimmable via potentiometer. Ignore this is very badly written, but that was last minute stuff. I just wanted to get the principle. Bad excuse. Okay, the software shall have a dimming function that uses the potentiometer as input. And the dimming function shall ensure that the potentiometer give a perceived linear brightness from complete dark to full brightness. As I read this, is really crap. Okay, what I was trying to say here is, so we have a requirement. You're going to use a potentiometer, the user, to dim a display. But you want to, when you turn the knob from left to right, it should have a perceived linear brightness response. So as we all know, the eye is a logarithmic response to, is it not? I always get confused. In any case, logarithmic response to brightness. So what you want is in the beginning, when you turn the potentiometer, the brightness should increase slowly, but at the end of the turning the potentiometer, the brightness should increase exponentially fast. So just because your that's to counter your eye's response to brightness. So then your perceived reception would be a nice linear, the thing is getting from dark all the way to brightness. Otherwise, what typically happens is in the beginning of turning the potentiometer, everything happens, and then the last half of the potentiometer, nothing happens perceived. So that's a long speech for just saying, for verification, you will go and you tick off, the display shall be dimmable by potentiometer. That's just the inspection. Inspect, is there a potentiometer to do this? Yes, tick in the box. The software shall have a dimming function. You look in the software, is there a function that reads this input and gives some kind of output? Yes, it's there, tick, it's an inspection thing. But now we go to the dimming function shall ensure that the potentiometer gives. So here you actually now need to test how well this thing is working. And when you go to, okay, so you will always so do that for verification. You do everything with verification. So now you have a verification procedure that obviously you will move the potentiometer 1 degree at a time, and you have a lumens device that actually measures it, and then in the end it should match the inverse graph of what your eye response is, and there, voila, you have proof that this thing is now nice and linear. But for qualification, you're only interested in this last one because it's the performance. You're qualifying the system. So maybe let me just give a much easier to understand example. I think for a lot of us, we never really need to worry about qualification. Sorry, maybe I can't say that at all. That's just my perception. But when you work on a big system where, like the helicopter that I've worked on, so that's a very easy example. We've went through from 2001 when I joined, we basically were in the weapons verification phase. So everything is verified and tested, and you check all the functions, and it's a lot of hangar testing and flight tests, etc. Until you verify that everything is now working. Only then that we go into the qualification test phase, which was a specific test phase where it was about how fast can the aircraft fly forward, sideways, what they call hot and high operation. So at high temperatures and high altitude, how well does it handle its performance characteristics? Your weapons, the accuracy of the weapons, your fire tempo, and yeah, well, accuracy, the visionics, accuracy of your visionics, and the whole harmonization of the aircraft. So that's a qualification phase. So that's the slight difference. So in a sense, you can say you never have to do qualification because with verification you have effectively done qualification. But as per this example, you can see there's a There's a subtle difference, but in a big system like a aircraft or a train or stuff like that, you will actually have these. With the verification, you really just tick everything off, and then you go into the qualification phase where it's all about performance characteristics. And you can argue, I don't know if it's necessarily true, but you can argue that with verification, you just need to verify that you meet a requirement. With qualification, you can actually push the boundaries, and then in your qualification documentation, the requirement might have specified the aircraft should do 100 kilometers an hour forward. In qualification, you can now say this aircraft is qualified to do 130 kilometers an hour. So, yep, difference between qualification and verification. If we then move up, certification versus qualification. I must say, when I was a junior engineer, this stuff tripped me up because we used the term certification and qualification completely intertwined and confused. But there is actually a massive difference. So while qualification is something you do as a company, you qualify your product. Certification, well, firstly, certification is normally only required when you have safety critical systems. Otherwise, you don't bother with certification. And you as a company, you the design authority, manufacturer, OEM, whatever you want to call yourself, you can never certify your own product. Certification is done by a certification authority. Like in aircraft, you will have the CAA, Civil Aviation Authority, and it's always specified against standards. So the OEM provides the certification evidence to the certification authority, after which the certification authority then certifies that the product conforms to these specific standards. So clearly there's a big difference, and certification is a thing on its own. So the product never, you never certify the product. You don't let me clarify. You don't certify that this is a helicopter. That's not certification. The certification looks at specific issues. So in the helicopter, you would certify that or you will get certification that the aircraft conforms to regulations, which means the thing is safe to fly. So certification is about aspects of your product, not, hey, yes, this product is actually a product. Certification requirements will always be explicitly. Okay. So what I was saying here, whenever the customer comes to you and tells you need to certify the product, the first thing you should do is try to get out of it, because there's nothing as expensive as certification. So really don't take certification lightly if you haven't done it before and you now step into it. If the customer just throws around certification terms, first see if you can convince him that this doesn't need certification. So clearly when you work with stuff that can kill people, there's no way around it. Cars, trains, whatever, because those things must be certified. So, but yes, like I said, yeah, certification process is also a whole topic on itself. Which then brings us to sort of my traceability part 2. It's just a whole lot now. So once again, requirement validation verification, we've layered that. So you will use your requirement and your verification evidence to qualify the system. So this is maybe a bit of a lie here, like I said. This is one way you can do it, because you have all the evidence already from verification to write the qualification document. But typically you would have a qualification phase on your own that gives you your qualification parameters. But in any case, this evidence, it's this evidence that you use in qualification, and it's the same evidence that you use in certification. But when we talk certification, it's always specific. Your certification authority don't give a crap about all your functional requirements, etc. So the moment you work with a certification authority, the first thing they'll give you is the set of stuff that you need to, the set of requirements that you need to conform to. You will immediately check that requirements they give you into your requirements database. Your validation would be certification. And then in the end, you will verify that you've done, or that you accomplish this. Now, certification, it's also a thing on its own, and in a database, because they have their own language. So to get certification, they talk about CRIs and do you conform to this? And so that's a bit of an animal on its own. But in any case, in the end, for both these things, you just use your requirements and your verification. Yes, how much time is 34? Let me just quickly bring it a bit in a practical how I like to run things in my little world. And then we can have the debate. So you have your customer requirements coming in here. So you start writing your requirements. You have your synthesis, I like to call it, where you stare at the ceiling and refine it and do all your derived requirements. In this same database, typically doors, you have your requirements which link to your validation, and you have requirements which you link to your high-level verification specifications. And then from these things, but in the requirements, this is in my world, I divided specifically into contractual stuff, which is visible to the client, and then internal, not visible to the client. Because you will have a lot of derived requirements that you need to get this thing to work, but don't tell the customer about it if he doesn't need to know about it, because out of experience, everything the customer knows about suddenly becomes something you need to prove, and if there's a hiccup with it, it causes you heartache and pain, and you need to prove it to the client, where if he doesn't know about it, you can mitigate it in your own time and in your own pace. So I keep a definite 2 sets of books, what the client wants to see, and from this requirements, now you create this document, a requirement specification for the client, which you obviously want signed off with your client, because that becomes your technical contract with the client. Now, okay, this all depends on how the contract is written on a high level, but this is in my ideal world. They will send me the requirements, we give the requirement specification, and this is the thing you sign off, because there's a lot of ambiguous and dubious things in a customer requirement. This, because you're an awesome system engineer, is clean, and there's no ambiguous, no ambiguous stuff in there. So that's what you want your contract on. So from this requirements, which lives in a database, will typically, you don't need this, but create the internal requirement specification, which is everything, and you will create your internal design description. And this is the contractual stuff that you must meet, but it doesn't explain exactly how you accomplish it. So you have your detailed design description document, which is the use cases and the why we need it and how we're going to implement it, etc. So this is the what you must do, and this is the how you do it. And similarly, you will typically also give your customer a subset of your detailed design description, because they also want to know. That depends on your contract. Then you have your other contracts, FMIAs and hazard analysis and all those things, and interface control documents, blah, blah, blah. And then from your requirements, you typically will have your main verification document, which split up in a lot of acceptance test procedure documents, or however you want to run this. But everything starts from your little database over here. And then these internal requirements specification and design description should be the Bible for your engineers. The only thing they should ever need to read in an awesome world is these 2 documents. They shouldn't know or have to know about these things. So your hardware designers use this to go away and do their hardware design, mechanical software, and write the software requirement specifications. So in an engineering world, this is now in the V, that detail level, and the bottom where you actually get the stuff going, actually manufacturing it. And then obviously everything belongs in a configuration control. Yeah, that was a mouthful. Yeah, okay, that's it. So go.
Oh, I've just got a question against the diagram. So it's Nick Pickering here. Hi. I used to work at Cubic back in 2004 when we first tried to introduce systems engineering. So my only question is I had around the diagram is, historically, when we first introduced systems engineering, we tried to put everything indoors. So all these hardware design documents and software requirements specifications were also indoors, so we could trace them up in here. Have you moved away from that and the design descriptions? Have you moved away from that now, or do you still keep everything in the database? Because there's a trade-off between the ability to do traceability and the ability to train everybody how to use doors well and not cause carnage.
I don't want to discuss on dirty laundry, but we currently not in a good place, and I would really, that's actually where this document started, because I want Cubic to get back on track. But no, what confuddled things a bit is the introduction of Jira and all these awesome tools and managers that's keen to use new things. So we ended up having things like Jira. So
sprawl.
we export this to Jira now, and then now I'm sitting with a lot of duplication. I have the rules in here and I have it in Jira, and everybody now work against Jira, and then I'm like, do we actually even need doors anymore? Because Jira you can now close down doors, because you only, if you want to work in Jira, then work in Jira. So yeah, no, it's a let's just say that this is what I like to see. What Cubic is doing is currently being discussed.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Sorry, Jessica, you had an interesting question which I don't want to drop. Do you just want to raise that again?
Yeah. So where I have encountered the semantic debate about the distinction between validation and verification in the past, sometimes I've been the victim of the debate. Sometimes I've been the cause of the debate. So I'm not blameless in this. As you described it, providing a rationale for every requirement, a justification for every requirement, allows you, the systems engineer, to say with confidence that this set of requirements that's here needs to be here. All of these requirements are necessary, which is an important part. That's an important aspect, I think, of validation. And validating a set of requirements against higher level user needs makes sense to me. Verifying a system against its requirements, verifying a design against its requirements, that's intuitive. The approach to qualification that you outlined was that's a nuance that I hadn't really, well, I had just chucked qualification into the too hard bucket. If someone cares enough, they'll explain it, or they'll make a case for why their definition of qualification is important. And I've definitely been in the role of driving certification requirements, both as a certifier, as an evaluator on behalf of a certified certification.
I'm in trouble now.
And also on behalf of a developer that was trying to puzzle its way through, like, what is the approach to certification when the certification authority did not provide clear, unambiguous guidance. But thinking about, so sets of requirements and and validating requirement sets in the context of user needs, that makes sense to me. Verifying designs against requirements, verifying implementations against requirements, that makes sense to me. But something that has proven challenging before is validating systems. And so sometimes system validation is less clear than, sometimes I think it's frankly overlooked because it can't really be done by the developer. Validating a system, establishing that this system, as built, as implemented, is complete and necessary, is really only something that an end user can do. So I wonder if if you could comment on or share your thoughts on system validation in this context. And then
Honestly,
if there's time,
loading
I'll
me.
also ask about qualification testing, acceptance testing, and validation acceptance testing, and see if you can help me puzzle that out as well.
Yes, you're giving me a question here, which I'm not sure I can answer, because for me, up till you've done it now in this way, it's been easy and clear cut. Let's just see if we can. Go away. No, where do we? Maybe the V is the place to. Wow. Okay. Effectively, these levels in my world, and that's how I've written my database, is not just in a system. This is also in a system with subsystems, because the way I understand your question, you're effectively saying, okay, we have a helicopter, which is a lot of subsystems. Now let's make it bigger. Like in my life, the helicopter is not the system. The system is the helicopter plus the spares, the depot, maintenance facility. So that's where you start. So it's a very high level thing, the whole environment plus then you get to the air vehicle. And then you break it down into, okay, so at this high level already you have the big subsystems, your depot plus your helicopter. And then that's what I hear you going to, how do you validate that? But where I want to go is, why is that any different? Because that's a high level set of requirements which gets broken down. This level of breaking down just gets more data, or it's a lot more levels. But for me, it shouldn't change anything. On the highest level, we have this complete system. It's the helicopter plus the maintenance facilities and the test systems. It's still stuff that you have verification for. And that's in my world where it sort of ends. So even at this highest level, you have requirements and you verify it. Is that what you're asking, or am I missing?
I think I was going to ask the same question. Maybe I can give you my question and Jess can tell me if it's the same question. My sort of nitpick was going to be that I totally agree with your definitions of validation and verification as activities that need to happen. But I think when you look at the INCOSE definitions of this as well, and they've been clarified a little bit in some of the recent releases of needs and requirements documents and things like that out of the requirements working group, that they make a distinction between what are you verifying and what are you verifying against, and what are you validating and what are you validating against. And your definition of validation here, I think, is validating that the requirements at a lower level meet the requirements at a higher level. And your definition of verification is, does your system meet your requirements? And those are valid definitions, I think, but you can also ask different questions and use the words verification and validation. And you can say, for example, does my requirement set meet the standards for writing a good requirement set? And the INCOSE definition would say that's requirements verification, rather than system verification, which I think is what you're talking about. And similarly, I think what Jess is asking about would be what they would call system validation. And I think what you're talking about is requirement validation. You're talking about requirements against requirements rather than system against requirements. Is that similar to your question, Jess?
Yes. Well said.
I'm now, okay, maybe I should read more what INCOSE was saying lately. It seems like you say they have refined this lately. You don't perhaps have the definition handy. Maybe I should go and do my homework.
It
is. I've seen it different in different places on different contracts. So some military contracts that I've worked on have been, validation is, we verify against the requirement, like in a contract, like the ones we've had. But validation is, the customer proving its intended capability, because the requirements might have gaps in.
So what I hear is validation is customer driven in this definition. because
I've not looked at the latest INCOSE one.
no, the way you guys describe it, because you say the customer validate that the requirements is what, or the system is what they wanted, or
Yeah,
I-
it's
this is a
some
bit of a
it-
new concept to me. In my life, I haven't encountered that, which doesn't make me right, of course.
I think that it also doesn't make us right or me right, or you wrong, frankly. I think that one that like so many things in systems engineering, the details depend on like the level, the sort of perspective that you have. And if you look, down at if you're looking top down, you might, that is from acquirer to supplier, looking down on the thing, you might find that how do you know that your needs are going to be met? How do you know that this thing, when it's used, is going to do what it needs to when it needs to? Some of that is going to rest on the back of a body of verification evidence, but the analysis of all of that verification evidence validates a system prior to its operational use. So anyway, I know it's late enough in the day that my brain is I'm not firing on all cylinders. But that I find this to be quite thought-provoking.
It feels to me like, okay, I might be living in a perfect world here, but the reason for the validation in my little world is mitigated by this step where I say,
Maybe.
once the customer has given you its requirements, you go back to the customer and say, here's the specification. And then
Yeah.
obviously you and the customer do some shirt tearing and pulling hair and whatever until you agree on the specification. But once this thing is signed, effectively, it almost feels like what we are talking about now is this is in your validation process where the customer validate that what he wanted here is actually what you've written here. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah. So I think it's a lot of the experience that I've got is actually from the customer perspective, not from the developer perspective. And so that may be part of the distinction here is, how does the customer know that they've put the right requirements on contract? How does the customer have confidence that what they've asked for is going to deliver some capability that they require in order to achieve some goal or need that they have? And so it may simply be that there's I think that from a developer perspective, if you start with a contract that's imposed on you, and you work within the constraints of that, this makes a lot of sense. The question that I had was related to that other level, that other perspective. I see. Nick's very politely got his hand up again.
So it's unusual for me. Yeah, so to get an example from what you were saying, Cobus, is the validation might happen at every stage. And where you said that you're going to use a lithium battery in the design or in a derived requirement, it might be that the customer has a gap in the requirements and says it needs to operate to minus 50 degrees, which is a place where the lithium battery wouldn't operate because there's gaps in the requirement. So they might validate along the way to make sure, one, there's not gaps in the requirements, or two, do a trial in the Arctic to make sure the stuff works its intended use. So it covers gaps in requirements, but also conflicting requirements, but also, so if your requirements are always perfect, there's less need for validation. They never are. So you need validation to make sure it works as intended, rather than documented. I haven't looked at the INCOSE definitions for a long time, but this is just from the military contracts I've worked on when government agencies have been hassling me, the UK and Australia on this.
I can share a relatively recent INCOSE diagram that I find helpful in this
Yes,
space if people are interested.
Yeah, that'd be
yes,
good.
yes.
Yep.
Do you mind if I just take
Yeah,
this
yeah,
screen
take
share?
over.
I think that's the other problem, isn't it? There's been so many different things over the years.
Sorry, guys, I have to drop out in a few minutes just to vacate the office. But there is a clear distinction between qualification and verification according to ISO 9001. So I've just pasted the link in the chat box if you guys want to just have a look and verify that that's sane at all, or is it just some crazy person writing rubbish? But other than that, I will catch up with you next time. Thanks, guys, for the chat. Thanks, Cobus. Nice to see you again, mate. And catch up again.
Till next time.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is from the needs requirements verification verification lifestyle model or something like that. I think this has now been split up into separate documents, but I think this is still the view of it. And I think what you're talking about, Cobus, when you say validation is this arrow here. You're validating that the design input requirements meet your integrated set of needs or your highest level requirement statements.
Yes. Yes.
And when you talk about verification, you're talking about either this arrow here or this arrow here, which is verifying that your system meets your design input requirements, which I think is
Yes, I think it agrees. Yes.
totally valid. But there's also the requirements verification. There's the design verification and the product verification, which is checking them against standards and organizational requirements. And then there's design and system validation, which is checking these things against your integrated set of needs. I don't know if that view helps at all.
I'm just quickly trying to digest.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so validation in this sense always goes back to the user requirement, in other words.
Yes.
So it's the intention of what the user wanted. Okay.
Yes.
intended capability. Yep.
Now that sort of breaks my definition of validation to some extent, but
Sort of, but
no.
you do validate that set of that set of requirements against the set of needs. That is, I don't have any requirements that I don't need, that are not, I don't have any, I don't include any requirements that aren't necessary.
But now effectively we can just call it a rationale. Perhaps you used that term earlier.
Maybe.
Instead of validation, because if this version of validation is sort of what's currently the accepted meaning, then I should rather change mine to rationale or whatever.
But well, it's I think there's some utility in using the word valid, describing the act of establishing a requirement, establishing the need for a requirement as validating the requirement. So like, I don't think that's incorrect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think my other nitpick might have been when you were talking about validation of your requirement, I think you were looking at it from a bottom-up sort of perspective. Do all my requirements have a rationale that justifies them existing based on my set of needs? I think there's another part to the requirements validation, which is a sort of top-down, saying, is the combined set of my requirements here sufficient to deliver my set of needs here? And there's sort of two aspects to that requirements validation process.
True.
Maybe it's little v validate versus capital V validate. Let's just make this more complex for systems engineers.
No, I think, like I say, if this is the accepted what INCOSE is recommended. Let's not confuse the issue at all. And I'll change my language rather, because I'm just this validation thing. Is it something you guys think? It looks awesome on a diagram, but I can't really say how does it happen in real life? At which stage? How does that document look? This thing that says this system satisfies is that top one, system validation, that we built the right thing. How does that look in practice? I've never encountered it, because in my world it's very clear cut driven. In the aircraft thing I've been involved. Once you've done your requirements and verified that you met it, it's not there's no but that we meet this or that. It's done. So I'm curious. Okay, sorry.
So I've encountered that this system validation in like a US aerospace, US defense, space defense kind of context before. It may be that there's a lot of things in INCOSE's process that are quite like US defense centric, and have been extrapolated out to become, so that it, how important is it to validate that a system is going to, is the right thing? Is it sufficient to just put the system into operation and, observe that, depending on the system and its use and function? It may be that that top level system validation isn't really needed, that the operation of the system in its operating environment provides the data, provides the information to say, yep, it's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, I think that you can make the argument that all of these other arrows aren't, if everybody's working perfectly and there's no errors made, it's just these arrows down the middle that you need. If your transformations are perfect every time, you don't need to do any checks, and everything just works out. We live in the real world, and so you need to do all these checks and find all the missing bits.
No, but where I'm getting at is the bottom one. We completely understand. It's everybody does that every day. This bottom arrow is not. That is verification. You physically go and you test this thing, and it's in a document that you deliver to the customer to show I've tested it, or they witness the test. So so I understand that, but that's my question. Yeah, how does this look in? Who writes this document to say, and what's the format? How does it look? What?
I've got an answer to that just from my experience on Eurofighter. So we, like you've mentioned, Cobus, we verified against design requirements or against requirements, and even up to mission system spec that the whole Eurofighter contract was built on, with many levels of requirements and design documents in between. So that's the blue lines. And then at different stages during the design, people, the government agency put together from representatives of the Air Force and procurement agencies across different countries, did the validation, just effectively checking we're happy when you've chosen that chip or whatever. But also once the aircraft was certified to fly, we'd met all the contractual requirements and we were paid for it. It still went through a 2-year validation program to make sure Eurofighter did its thing before it got declared as a capability to NATO. So in the aerospace industry, sometimes it's that task not necessarily done too much with the suppliers, more
so
with the customer.
validation, I keep on picking this up, but nobody has said it explicitly. It sounds like validation is not done by us. Validation is done by the customer. Is that correct?
Not always, but yeah.
It depends which validation you're talking about. But yes, I would expect the customer to be involved pretty regularly. And I would often think of system validation as user acceptance testing.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that I know. Now when we talk a language that I know, that's so. Yes, we give all our verification qualification. When that was done, we handed the aircraft over to the user, and they use the same set of your acceptance test procedures and they use the same qualification test that we did, and they basically repeated that. So that would have then been, in this sense, validation. So they flew these things and then validated it.
yeah, you give it to the pilot or you give it to the train driver, and they
I
drive
can
it
live
and
with
say,
that.
does it work? And I think the same thing happens with design validation in my world as well. We give a design to the client and say, does this feel like it fulfills your brief? Because we've interpreted your brief to get to our set of requirements, and we've designed to those requirements, but ultimately we might have got something wrong here, and what we want to do is check that it actually fulfills your needs. And are you comfortable with this? And can you fly around a 3D model and look at it and say, oh, I didn't expect it to be that color, but I didn't tell you that I wanted it to be that color.
So actually sort of preliminary and critical design reviews and test readiness reviews and such, is it?
Yeah,
Or
probably.
equivalent,
They would fall into that category, I think, yeah.
This has been a wonderful
we need
discussion.
a one-pager.
This has been a wonderful discussion, but we're running right up against the end of time, and I know that others likely have, like I, likely have dinner waiting shortly. So I'm going to grab the screen.
I would like to update my document then with my new understanding. That would be interesting. So yeah, I feel like yes. So if I just rename my validation and then add the validation the way you guys, which now suddenly, now that we've discussed, it makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Good. Well, thank you, Cobus, for number one, volunteering to come and speak with us tonight, and to the attendees here for your time and attention, and a great discussion. I could do this all day. I wish I could do this all day. Our next meetup is currently being scheduled. It's likely to be held before the Easter break, so late March or early April. Topic to be confirmed and announced. We'll look to get that out as quickly as possible, very likely with the same kind of register for attendance kind of mechanism that we used this time around. And so ways to connect, you always see these at the end of our meetings. I'll distribute copies of slides to attendees. Contact information, some of our contacts have changed with the installation of the new committee earlier this month. So thanks for coming. Thanks for another great meetup. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks. Till next time.
Thanks, Cobus. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Great preso, Cobus.